Welcome to The Way It Should Be. I'm JD.
Hi, I'm Dean.
Dean. We got Ollie with us today. Ollie, who are you?
My name is Ollie Hurley. I'm a tattoo artist, traveler, adventurer, just whatever life has for me kind of guy.
World conqueror.
World conqueror.
Yeah, that sounds like a conquistador, colonist. I don't know if I...
So I guess I've known you, golly, how long have I known you for? Probably near 20 years? Probably something
Pretty
like
dang
that.
close, yeah.
So cool.
A large majority of my career, and I see a lot of old stuff that...
Oh, yeah.
let's...
Well,
I could do better now, right?
Yeah.
yeah, that's those guys that I tattooed on, a lot of those guys went back to Mexico. So, like, if I was to ever do it again, like, I don't have any bad work here. It's all in Mexico. It's all in Mexico.
That's great.
Yeah. And there was some bad stuff. I
Yeah.
think your knuckles are pretty bad.
Yeah, I mean, I can't even remember half the stuff. I mean, I was collecting stuff. I like to consider that the dark ages. There's always a time of ignorance, I think, in any growth of anything, whether it's life or your given trade or anything. There's just opportunities to progress, and some of us are a little bit more astute than others. And I definitely was a little thick-headed,
I remember you saying, hey, all right, you're going to tattoo my fingers. And I was like, I don't think I'm ready for that. And you're like, no, you're going to do it.
Yep.
And then immediately I screwed it up. Like within the first line, like, see, that's what happens, man. I'm done.
That's a learning experience. It's just too bad it's like so permanent,
But they're really not. When I look at tattoos, I'm like, they're not permanent enough. They always are going to fade. There's that degradation, color work, especially with UV exposure and things like that. All black ink, that's carbon. That's what we're made up of. And our body's going to continually to break that down as we age, and
Yeah, and now you can just laser it all off.
yeah.
So
It's almost like people are getting tattoos like people look at marriage. Oh, if it doesn't work out, I'll just get a divorce, get some laser.
See, I always had an idea if somebody probably could make a bunch of money if they would come up with some kind of tattoo ink that once it's there, if you decide you don't want it, pass a UV light over it and just melts it away completely.
They actually make a pigment that it's supposed to start fading. It only lasts for like 8-10 years, something like that.
I think I've heard about that.
But as an artist, why would you want to put your efforts into something that it's like being a builder and you're like, oh, this structure isn't going to be here in 10 years. Do I really have to make this very,
Yeah.
Right. You don't have to work that hard on it, right? It's just going to go away.
Yeah.
Can you ease up on that pin clicking?
Yeah, my bad. Sorry, I'm just not going to hold it because my ADD will have me clicking that thing all the time. I'll be clicking the crap out of it.
Get you one of those spinners or
spinner or something. I think that's why I dip snuff.
Probably so.
Because it's like focusing on something else at the same time.
something
more
to
than
do.
more than one thing. I noticed that, man. I got into reading a bunch of listening to a bunch of audiobooks, and if I'm doing nothing, trying to listen to an audiobook,
Can't do it.
I cannot do it.
Yeah.
If I'm driving, I can do it. But I'm doing something else, or if I'm drawing. If I'm drawing, it doesn't even just doodling, right? It's not even. If I'm doodling and listening to something, I will retain every bit of what I'm listening to.
Yeah.
And just tell me to sit in a room and listen to it, and I'll be like, "Oh no, we'll do tomorrow."
Oh yeah, I can't even pay attention. Yeah.
But if I'm doing
ADD.
something else, I'm locked on. And for whatever reason, especially this is funny because I remember getting in trouble in school because like you'd flip through my journal or whatever at school, and it'd be just drawing after drawing after drawing, and nothing good. It was all crap. It was all doodles, right? But like, this is what you're doing. You're not paying attention in class. You know, the teacher would be like, "You're not paying attention. You're doing this." Like, no, that was, and I didn't have the words to say it as a kid, but no, that was me paying attention. Was doing something else. Otherwise, and so here in my adult life, there's been a handful of times where I've gone to classes. I'll pull the instructor aside first break or something and say, "Hey, look, man, I promise I'm listening back here to you. But if I'm not doodling, if I'm not doing something else, hang it up, man. I'm not gonna retain anything of it."
Yeah, for sure.
And actually, as an adult, that's been well received.
Yeah. Well, nobody's gonna listen to a little kid say that.
I think that there's some teachers that would pay attention. I had this one coach that knew that no matter what, after lunch, I'm going to fall asleep. And he would be like, all right, I'm going to put a movie on today, because he didn't feel like teaching history or something. He'd be like, everybody, you better pay attention to this. Ollie, you can go ahead and go to sleep. Because he knew I was still going to perform.
Yeah.
I was still making straight A's, National Honor Society, Student Council, Future Business Leaders of America, all that stuff. And so you just have to have somebody that understands, this guy operates a little bit different. And I think it's kind of weird that they try to force everybody
Yeah.
to follow this one narrative, or now.
Well, that's
narrative
just the way the
that's
system. Yeah.
real crazy.
I did the same thing in school. I would sit there and doodle, and my teachers give me shit too. But they're like, "Why aren't you taking notes?" Well, I could take notes, but it's not going to do any good. So I just remember what you're talking. Why can't I just remember what you're telling me?
Yeah.
I mean, that's how it works. I had a history class, and the guy screwed up the whole grading system because every day we had to do a daily test over what we learned the day before. So I just paid attention to what he was telling me, that day, and then I'd come in and ace that test the next day, and it counted for 80% of our grade. The homework was the other 20%, so I just never did homework. And he pulls me aside one day. He goes, "Hey, man, how come you don't ever do the homework?" I'm like, "Why? What's my grade right now?" He goes, "It's an 80. Well, that's all I need, right? I just need a 70. I'm not the one that came up with the grading system. You fucked it up. So he would try to give me some shit about not doing the homework or not taking notes. And I'm like, dude, I'm passing your class. Leave me alone. What more do you want?
Yeah. It's weird. We've talked quite a bit about the school system and the school districts and how they try to force everybody in that box. I don't think that I realized how much I enjoy learning until probably until my mid 30s, how much I enjoy reading and how much I enjoy learning. Because I think being forced to read and the things that I could have, like Texas history in school, I love Texas history, but some of the stuff that I would have enjoyed that probably most boys would have enjoyed wasn't really pushed. It was on stuff that's like, I'm going to have a hard time reading something I have no interest in.
Yeah.
And I get
It wasn't applicable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I mean, I was probably into my 30s before I was like, man, I enjoy reading and learning and even the stuff I read now is not. I very seldom read any kind of anything that's not
like fiction.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah, I'm the same way.
I
was butted head with my English teacher, especially my senior year. Miss Cheney was her name, and she always gave me shit because I fucking hated that class because I never did any of the work. And she's like, "Why don't you ever do anything?" I'm like, "Because I already know English. Like I can speak English, I can write it. I don't see the point of your stupid class. What are you gonna? You're gonna make me read some boring ass book that nobody likes? Is this what we're gonna do? What am I gonna get out of this? This doesn't make any sense. Why can't I do something that actually is interesting?" And that was a lot of the classes, right? Kids don't get to do things that are interesting to them. They force them into this,
especially boys.
I agree with
into
that.
into this system.
Especially boys,
And
I think.
Yeah.
when you're young, you're very short-sighted. Like now, I would almost compare that to if you went to a restaurant, that was a culture that you're, you don't have very much personal experience with or anything like that. Are you going to order the same thing that you're comfortable with that you're going to like, or are you going to utilize that opportunity to maybe try something new that you might think is the most fantastic thing? And,
Well, like Christina Hoff Sommers has a book called, I think it's called The War on Boys. And it talks about who makes the curriculum up and how boys, like the college graduation rate is less for boys than for girls. And the high school dropouts, more boys drop out than girls. And a lot of it, in her theory, stems to, making who makes the curriculums. Well, teachers make curriculums. 90% of teachers are women. And so they just naturally, they tend to lean that curriculum to more of a feminine kind of stuff that they might have liked when they were growing up. And so it really hurts the boys going up through school because they're not getting that same, because they're just not interested in it, right? And the model of behavior. And then you add on boys being rambunctious and needing to burn. I always joke, my sons are like working dogs. If they run cross country and every morning they show up and run 5 to 6 miles before school.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and then they run after school too. But if they don't do that, I'm sure, like, there's been times where my youngest boy, I'm like, hey, you need to go out and run some laps. He needs to be worked a little bit. You know what I mean? He just needs to. But, and then recess started going away, for kids earlier and earlier. And then you hear things like schools now doing like, oh, it's over 95 degrees. We're not going outside. They can't go outside for recess. We're going to watch a movie instead of recess.
That's wild.
That's crazy compared to, I remember not going out, the sun would take flesh. I mean, the slide would take flesh off your legs. It was so hot, and didn't care. You're going to go burn some of that off. Everybody's going to come back in stinking, but
and tired,
tired and wore out. Yeah.
Yep.
But
Well, I remember a time when you went to play outside, you were almost forced,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden,
Yeah. We talk about that all the time.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like, don't come back in until it's dinner time, or something like that.
Yeah.
And you could run down the street. You didn't have to have a cell phone on you, with your location or anything like that. Everything was kind of considered safe. Even the dangers were somewhat safe. It's just like that was almost like some type of natural selection.
Yeah.
At
Yeah.
its finest.
Coming into the house during the summer, my mom, what are you doing in the house? I need something to drink. There's a hose outside. What are you doing in here? Get out.
Yep.
Yes, ma'am. So you got to, and you always get your stupid buddy that doesn't know anything. And, you turn that hose on right away and he goes to drink out of it. It's hot as shit. You're like, ha, you fucking retard.
so let's get enough about schools here. I'm sure we'll get back on at some point because I would imagine that all three of us probably suffered a lot of the same kind of things in public education. Just looking around the career choices we have and stuff like that, they were, what our paths led were probably a lot on not being, I want to say not being great, but not being interested in the way public schools lead you. So,
Yeah.
but let me ask you a few questions here. So how did you get, I know it's been a long time, but how did you get into tattooing?
So I've always been interested in people that were marking themselves. That's like the ultimate form of self-expression. It's a t-shirt you couldn't take off. When I was growing up, I was brought up in a very religious household. It was very strict, very controlled. My father was from the military, so he controlled the way our hairs were cut, the lengths of our shorts, we just wore white t-shirts. Everything had to be very plain.
Oh, wow.
And I was always interested in it. We didn't have TV. There wasn't TV shows with tattooed people on. It was pretty much a social,
It's just taboo.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be the right word. After a while of being in that type of environment and seeing things that I was exposed, like National Geographic, and seeing these other cultures, other peoples that had adorned their bodies, reading things in the Bible that was used as a tool to try to get people to not think for themselves and to restrict self-expression. There was also scriptures in there that were saying that modifications were what the children of Israel were doing, with being referenced to having a nose ring, which would be a beautiful adornment to the Lord and all these things. And so I knew that piercing and body modification has existed. It's one of the oldest artistic forms for so many civilizations. So I was like, that's so crazy that it's not socially acceptable. So I did a lot of my own research on that stuff. And even my parents were like, where do you get the ideas of, these tattoos? Because I would draw on myself with Sharpie markers, and my mom would wash all of our white clothes together and then pissed at me because Sharpie marker got all over the white clothes. So even in school, I was always doodling like you on my binders. And you remember we would get the little covers for our books.
The book covers. Yeah.
That was so fun.
Yep.
It was like
It was like
having
canvas.
this color.
You carried with you all the time. Yeah.
Yep.
And so you'd be writing on that, and the next thing you know, somebody sees that you write somebody's name pretty, and they want you to write their girlfriend's name real pretty, or something for a note that they're writing, or you're sitting in the back of class drawing barbed wire or tribal or roses on people, not paying attention to school. Yeah.
The S that everyone drew.
Yeah.
Sometimes I still do it just to see if I can.
So yeah, just all that stuff. I felt like it was geared towards me because at that time it was very taboo, like you were saying, and I rebelled against every form of society because it seemed like everywhere I looked, I saw that, like you were talking about with education, that we were geared and pushed towards this direction. And I looked at it as this set of preconceived rules that I never agreed with when I entered into life. And I was like, why do I have to live life like this? Because I view this as wasteful and futile, whereas this seems abundant and I can be free to be myself and express myself. And I found more misanthropic people inside tattoo parlors that I could associate with. And I learned that no matter what type of life or background somebody was from, that I could always find some kind of a common ground, especially with somebody that had a slightly askewed perception of what the norms, the social norms, or,
Yeah.
So yeah.
So
It's awesome.
did you apprenticed, right? So that we've talked a lot about that kind of the way, or maybe not a lot, but we've talked about the way that society's gone with like apprenticeships going away, but in all kinds of industry and crafts and everything. But that's very much alive in the tattoo industry, right? Like that is how you do it.
Yeah. So I had already been privy to hands-on education. My father figure that helped raise me after my biological parents were divorced was a master plumber. I learned a strong ethic, how to work smart, not hard, how to really just put in the hours and then let those experiences accrue in order to give you the training. And so I always liked the hands-on approach. I had more respect for that, and I knew I never wanted to sit in a cubicle and type imaginary numbers that weren't really applicable to my life or I had no interest in.
That's soul crushing. I've done that work. It's awful.
Yeah. And I've had those jobs. And, I had to work a lot of jobs that weren't associated while I was working on building a career, But originally I moved out to Utah to join a band, and we were doing pretty good. We got on local college radio. We won Battle of the Bands, all this stuff. But I realized that I was no Mozart with music. Even though I loved and appreciated it, I knew I was only going to progress so far as a musician. Whereas the visual arts, I knew I could sit in a room and I could push myself. I didn't have to rely on other band members, and I could take it as far as I was willing to work, and I believe in being a hard worker. I was very self-motivated. I worked at a tattoo shop apprenticing 7 days a week, maintaining a full-time job as a forklift operator. And, it was so weird how things crossed over. It was like working at the warehouse. We used to have these metal banding strips to strap down the pallets, and I would cut those, and I brought those to the shop one day, and we were using that as spring material for respringing our coil tattoo machines. It was like everything. I just looked at everything as something to be utilized to get me further down the road to where I wanted to be. And I knew mine was just a slightly outside of the social norms and how I was going to live life. I was going to live life under my own terms.
How long did you apprentice? And what's the typical apprentice?
Typical, it's 2 years for America. There's people that went and learned under Horiyoshi in Japan, and they were working under him 7 years and still considered an apprentice.
Damn.
So I mean, that was a matter of perception too. And also, you're not given with the same, the gifts and abilities as the person next to you. So it's, we all have a natural aptitude. Some people nowadays I know are heavy hitters and are doing work that out of 3-5 years into tattooing that 15-20 year tattooer back in the day would have been getting into. But we also are exposed to so much more on social media. We have access to so much more information. It's not like back when I was coming up, the only place that you could find a tattoo magazine was a tattoo shop.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now it's on our phones, pictures of killer artists.
Yeah.
Instagram,
you can get on there.
And just the tattoo shops in general, like what was around when we were kids. Like you had to go to kind of the
biker sleazy.
Yeah. I can remember, the growing up here. So the Stockyards had some, and then you had Randy Adams over in between Fort Worth and Arlington, and then the one in Granbury.
Bone Daddies.
No,
Jackhammers. Jackhammers. That's what it was. Jackhammers.
In Granbury, but just you do look around, they're all over the place now.
But I feel like people didn't act up in those places. You stepped in and you had to have a certain level of respect for the environment. It was a heart check to even go in there. Nowadays, it's like people want it to be all customer friendly and, and it's almost like people that are collecting the trinket tattoos. It's like, I collected the semicolon or this and that. It's almost like they're getting the tattoos to fit in.
Right.
As opposed to back when I was getting into tattooing.
I think I caught I remember having tattoos just barely before everyone had tattoos.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was just barely. And I do remember at some point being like, it's kind of disappointed. I wanted to be different.
Yeah.
I wanted to be different. Now
it definitely took off as a trend.
It did.
Yeah.
It did. Probably with the tribal stuff, I think is what took it off as a trend.
Yeah.
You saw the tribal everywhere.
I got a buddy that just I thought at first he was going to kill himself because I don't know. He just seemed really depressed. And then I thought, so this dude was all straight laced. Like I would never have thought this guy would get tattoos ever. And now he's got some really nice artwork all over him. But he goes to these guys, like he'll fly to like Maryland, some dude out there and spend $3,000, get this fucking badass stuff done. But I was like, dude, what is wrong with you? Are you like something wrong with you? Because I never would thought he would do it. He's like, you know what? I just said, I'm just kind of rebelling against the way I grew up. And he grew up the same way I did as a Jehovah's Witness, So he just said, "Fuck it, I'm throwing it all out. I'm going to do what I want to do now."
I
Which I think is great.
I knew a guy that anytime he was, anytime he went through a breakup, anytime he had some kind of like major, like I don't want to say depression because he never struck me as depressed, but anytime something like that would happen, something negative in his life, he would end up with a bunch more tattoos. No. And I actually asked him about it one day, and he was like, "Yeah, it's kind of because I don't focus on, because when I'm sitting there getting tattooed, he's got both his, he's got socks. You probably know who I'm talking about. He said, I'm not focusing on whatever pain I'm going through in my life. It's just the pain of right now. Which is kind of funny because you talk to some runners, some people that run, and they kind of say the same thing. Running gets them out of whatever. When you're running, that's the only thing. You're just trying to run. You're clearing your mind. And that's kind of the sense what he told me with the tattooing was he couldn't focus on the pain that was in his life at the time. Mm-hmm. It was just the pain that was happening right there on his legs or on his arms or
so in a way, he's actually going through something and he's, discarding the pain that no longer serves him, trading it off with another discomfort, and then using that as almost like a tattoo therapy. Do you see that? Do you see being a tattoo artist? Okay, so used to, is it tattoo artist, tattooer? What's your preferred? There's a difference. Okay. So, and I've definitely seen all sides of that. There's tattooers that work at a walk-in shop. They don't really have a heavy clientele. They're going to tattoo whatever comes in the door, and there's nothing wrong with that. I love blue-collar tattooing. There's times where I guest spot at a shop and I'm at the mercy of whatever comes in, but I love that. It's an opportunity for me to just put my skills to the test or meet a new individual, and then a tattoo artist is somebody that they really concentrate on what it is that they have to offer. And I respect and I love those type of artists because sometimes they fall into a niche and people know them for a specific thing. But then sometimes people are really, truly an artist and they have that ability. So they want to utilize that skill set. And they have people that are usually willing to wait for their tattoos. And they have sketchbooks full of designs. They'll draw out something 5 times at a thumbnail size. And next thing you know, they've decided what they want to do for the huge composition and then draw up a beautiful back piece for it. That's a tattoo artist, somebody that has already been through it, knows what they want to do and put out there, and they concentrate on that.
So I guess probably for a while starting out, you're going to have to be a tattooer before you're a tattoo artist.
Absolutely.
So you yourself, do you see people come in for pain like we talked about? Like, do you ever pick up on that when you're doing somebody coming in doing a big piece or something like that?
Like I said, the type of people, the clientele has changed from the misanthropic person, the person that maybe was the little emo kid, going through something, maybe picked on or something and wants to express himself, wants to feel some type of discomfort and then earn something. Now it's, whether it's a kid going to the mall and buying jeans with holes already ripped in it, or somebody that's being put under by some surgeon so they could wake up and be all tattooed up and look like they had been through something, or using all the numbing creams, all that stuff. Yeah, I mean, people want to look like they've experienced something, and half the time they're just getting something because it's popular, and that's a way of acceptance now, getting tattooed. And so the people that are really looking for the pain, there's websites you get on, like you look up the brutal black guys, and those people are doing mag drags with these huge 45, mags, and they're just working that in there and just covering them in black and just scraping them across the face. Those people, I'm not going to say what's a form of healing for another individual. I can only say what I think is good for me. And I put myself into some places, like when we were discussing ceremony early, that might not be understandable to somebody on the outside looking in. But I do think that mental illness is a real thing. And I think that people have experienced trauma and they're going to utilize whatever tool. And sometimes I think pain is a tool that they use in order to overcome that.
It's probably better they get tattoos than heroin or...
Absolutely.
There's I've got some friends that chose that path instead. Like, I got a niece, she's addicted to meth and she won't get off it. She went in rehab for like a day and then left, but she'd rather deal with her issues with meth than I don't know, figure out.
Obviously, with the stigma of tattooers, I've seen my fair share of people that
For sure, yeah.
allowed drugs to rule their lives. You know, they neurologically rewired themselves, you know, whether they have an addictive personality or not. There are certain chemicals like methamphetamines that will destroy you. Yeah. And you can't blame that symptomatic issue being so prevalent in today's society whenever big pharma is pushing opiates and stuff. I mean, right now there's that movie that just came out about the painkillers, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, what is the name of that? I heard that. I've been wanting to watch it. I'll have to look it up.
Yeah.
But
if my recollection was a little bit clearer, I could I'll tell you.
So let me ask you a question. When somebody first starts apprenticing to be a tattooer or whatever you call them, do they just start off in the shop, just helping around the shop, like drawing stuff on paperwork? When do you actually move on to putting stuff on skin?
I didn't touch a skin or a machine until like maybe 6 months into it. Like I was doing every degrading thing that you could. You know, you start off by getting coffee and food for all the guys, scrubbing tubes when that was a thing.
You know, scrubbing tubes.
Now it's all disposable cartridges, cool, clean. But
autoclaves, running the autoclave.
I mean,
that's the name of it, right? Autoclave.
Yeah. Sterilization, steam sterilization, which I started the shop at a dry heat oven. That is not a good standard. You know, I was just excited that they had a sterilizer, I guess. But no, you have all these, what seems at the time is demeaning tasks like scrubbing the bathroom with a toothbrush. But really, that's not only showing you how hard you're willing to work to learn this trade, but there's times when you're in the middle of doing a big tattoo and you're filling it in with a little needle.
Kind of wax on, wax off thing.
And I'll tell you, I was thankful for all those times scrubbing that toothbrush because it taught you to not miss any spots. If there's holidays or some little spot you miss with a toothbrush, when you walk into that bathroom, you're going to see it.
I kind of imagine that there's an aspect of that too that's like the motorcycle club, like the prospecting time, right? Like we all have done this. So if you want to be a tattooist, this is the trade you want to do. You're going to go through this because everyone in here has went through this. So it's kind of a way to make that bond as well.
Yeah. And maybe you'll think twice before giving out all the secrets and you'll keep your mouth shut. Nowadays, everybody wants to look like the cool guy on YouTube. So they spill all the beans. And that's why anybody can just get a Amazon account and all of a sudden you're a tattooer, baby. Anybody could get it. Watch a few YouTube videos, order some stuff off Amazon.
That's how I started my surgery business.
Yeah.
So you come to me for discount surgery. I'll take that appendix out for $50. No problem.
Sounds like waking up in a bathtub full of ice or something.
He's got a van that he does that in. It's down by the river.
Yeah. Well,
Dean's half-price surgeries.
Half-price surgeries. Guaranteed to get it out. Can't say you're going to come back home, but
wow. So you've tattooed, I mean, kind of all over the place, right? Utah, Texas.
I've done a lot of traveling.
Guest spots everywhere.
Yeah. So I ended up taking a break from tattooing a lot of incoming stuff. I had a clientele, especially down in Austin. I decided to stop working at a shop. I bought a school bus that I was using to live in, so I'd have a home on the road, and I was working at different shops all over. I'm still traveling. I don't put a lot of this stuff on my social media. If you get on there, Saint X Ollie, that's my Instagram. If you get on there and you check that out, you're not really going to see a lot of stuff. Like I don't even have my dates posted for Tampa, but I'm flying out later this month to go tattoo for 3 days in Tampa at the convention there. I mean, I still do a lot of traveling, and now I have a family and I don't like to be away from home as much. And I don't feel like a leaf in the wind. I would always take my time when traveling. If I saw some restaurant that had a good gumbo or something, I'd be like, I feel like some crawfish, let's go check that out. But now it's just pretty much, I'm more serious about my time is valuable. It's limited. I go in, I work. I try to just clear myself mentally so I can focus in on the artwork, the tattoo at hand. When I'm in that moment, I'm not on my phone. The client has my attention. But prior to that moment, I'm not a phone guy. You know what I mean? Like I'm busy doing, and I don't have a lot of time to post stuff on social media. I kind of wish I was that generation because it seems so natural and easy for the younger generation, the kids on there. But
it's something where we keep trying to do stuff on social media. I'm not. He's like, you should run the Twitter. I'm like, I don't even understand Twitter, so I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, it's almost painful. I try to share the podcast stuff, Facebook and Instagram, and it's almost painful
Yeah.
for me to do it. Like oh yeah, get on there and do it. Which actually now I just realized they'll let you set the time so I can set things to post. I don't even have to
you
do
just
it.
do a whole bunch of stuff
Just
at
do
one
a bunch
time?
of stuff and set it for all week long.
Oh, nice.
But prior to that, it's we fall in that weird.
We need to get a
weird-
kid that knows. Well, I guess any of the kids can know what they're doing, but you get somebody else in that generation that's constantly on their phone, to do that shit for us.
Yeah. Well, we're in a weird generation where it's kind of like we had a lot of that stuff quick, but then we also had a childhood without it.
Yeah.
So
And I love that.
Yeah.
Those were the most free feeling days,
yeah.
If you got a flat tire, that's your problem, your situation. You just got
Figure it
to
out.
fix it.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember my first flat tire, no phone. I'm sitting there going, "What the fuck do I do? I've never done this before." So I actually had to get the manual out. I'm like, "Oh, they tell you in here. Okay, cool. Now, oh, great, no spare. Okay, so I guess I'm walking."
Yeah. And it's funny because there's still the hands-on type of people. There's people that when they find themselves in that situation today, they'll use their phone to watch a video on YouTube on how to change a tire. And and it's like we have this very powerful instrument that has all this knowledge in the palms of our hands. And people just watch it to watch people fail and trip over things and get hit in the balls. Yeah.
But it is funny.
It's funny.
It's been funny forever. It'll still be funny.
Yeah, I mean, to think about, I remember a story when I was doing the apprenticeship shop where you had left. It was way late at night. You left and you hit a deer on a motorcycle. You remember that? You remember this?
Oh yeah.
You hit a deer on a motorcycle.
No, so the deer hit me.
Ambushed him.
What kind of bike? What bike was he riding?
I was on a higher center of gravity, so thankfully I was able to keep it upright. I was on a 2011 Yamaha V-Star 1100 Custom.
Oh, damn.
And so I was going around a corner. It was late at night. It was about 1 a.m. I was going about 70 miles an hour, and I didn't see the deer. Usually you can see their lights shine back when they're off in the distance, but I didn't see this one until I saw one set of antlers go under my arm and the other set come forward and knock out my headlamp.
Oh, shit.
And then body just came and hit me in the side of the leg. It ripped my shoe off, and my bike started to swerve. And my main thought was just keep this sucker upright.
So that would have been during cell phone time, but where
I
we're
had a
talking
cell phone
about,
then.
yeah, a cell phone. But you remember when we're talking about, there was probably very little service.
I called my friend Charlie Woods.
Yeah.
I said, "Hey, a deer just hit me. I'm on the side of the road." And he was like, "I'll be right there with the trailer."
This was like Nokia just got Snake on the phone type
It might
stuff,
have
right?
been, maybe just after that, maybe like Razor time.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, those Nokias. I was working for Radio Shack at the time, so I had to hook up on that. I was like, "Ooh, I'm a baller. I got $100, faceplate."
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, the kiosk in the mall.
I remember finally saving up the money to get that Motorola Razor, and I was like, "Look, I got a Razor." And then the iPhone comes out. I'm like, "Oh, damn."
So, tattooed in Austin, all over Austin, 6th Street, all around.
Yeah.
Lots of places. That was probably, was that about 10 years? Were you down there about 10 years, or was it longer?
Yeah, it
than
was
that?
about 10 years.
About 10 years.
That was the longest I stayed in one spot.
I was thinking it was probably a while. How was that living down there? That can be a crazy area, a crazy town.
Yeah, it's definitely changed a lot within 10 years even. It was always a really cool, hip place, a little liberal. But now it's like real extreme. It was like all the people that made it cool and hip on the east side of town couldn't afford to live there anymore. The property taxes raised like damn near like 400%, I think, within the time that I was there. And everything started getting built over, all the things that were staples that I loved when I first moved to the town, because it seemed like a town.
Yeah.
It was this big city, but everything was laid out in this way that they just knocked all that stuff over and built these shoe boxes on top of each other. They would take these beautiful homes, destroy it, buy the lot, and then build 2 homes, on the one lot, have an A and a B address, and it's just crazy. So, but Austin was really good because I got to see all the different varieties of people, from the 6th Streets, from the transients, from the people that were, the trans person changing their panties in the alley, behind the shop, to like all these crazy people that you would meet, because Austin always had a mecca of different music events, movie events. So you'd meet people from all different walks of life. And then to the younger professional crowd, when I moved a little bit more south, because I've worked in shops that were walk-in shops. I've worked in appointment-only shops. When my friend Matt Morin My brother, who passed away, a few years ago, we started a shop together. He'd called me up and said, "Hey, I got an opportunity to build the shop, but I want to have artists going into this. So if you're not going to do this with me, then I don't want to do it." And I was like, I went and checked out the location. It was perfect. So I did that for 3 years, and we built up a shop from nothing into multiple locations. And then now when I go down there, I work at a shop called Southside. It's off of Congress, and it's pretty heavy walk-ins, but you still have room and space to do your appointments. So we just try to take walk-ins as we all have time, So all different types.
So do you have a pretty good clientele now, I guess, of people that are coming to you?
Yes and no. I kind of committed career suicide by moving up here in this particular part of Texas. It's kind of like being a surfer and asked to move off the coastline, The types of people, what they're asking for is all completely different. It's a lot slower. I have a lot of people that came out of the woodwork that collected years of work from me many years ago, and now they're bringing their kids to me or this and that, Wow. It's cool. It's awesome. It's a different thing. And it definitely frees me up. It's a little bit slower paced here, so I get to concentrate on doing stuff more so of what I want to do. But at the same time, sometimes I find myself just doing stuff because that's what I need to do to feed my family. And
so what's the difference? What would you say is the difference between people, like the different tattoos people in Austin versus up here would be getting?
So, excuse me. So in Austin, you have a lot of heavy hitters. It's a mecca for traditional tattooing. Back before Instagram, when everybody was stealing each other's tricks, now... whereas back in the day, you could definitely tell the difference between a West Coast tattoo, an East Coast tattoo, a Texas traditional tattoo, whether it was the color palettes, the stylized way that it was drawn. There was a lot of differences. So you had people like Tony Hundahl, Jason Brooks, Steve Byrne, like Rock of Ages is one of the most heavy hitting shops in Austin. And when I was working at Resurrection with Jeff Ensminger, and owned by Roger McMahon, we were like right down the street from Rock of Ages. So when you're going to bars and you're seeing these people that have collected work from all these heavy hitters, a sleeve by Tony Hundahl or maybe a big side piece by Chris over at Perfection Trevino, everybody's exposed to a higher level of art. So their expectations when they're walking into the shop are different, and they're willing to listen to the artist. As opposed to some guy that's, out in the country, maybe hasn't been exposed to the same thing. He sees something really cool that his wife showed him on Pinterest and then walks in and is like, I want this. It's not as free. It's not as...
You're in well, I guess both of them technically are college towns, two completely different college towns from where you're at now, right? Because you're down around Steamville some now? No?
I'm mostly, when I'm up this way, I've been working a lot with my friend Eric Lacefield over at Hard Under Blade in Weatherford.
Oh, okay.
I still hang out. I go down to Stephenville and tattoo an appointment, whenever
I
that's
can
available.
definitely see where the tattoos would be different from Austin and
That's
Stephenville.
what I was going to,
I thought you lived in Fort Worth or...
Well, I mean, hey, I'm not one to discourage anybody from collecting good tattoos. So it doesn't matter what you're into. I tell people there's no such thing as a good or a bad idea. There's just good or bad ways to present it. Mm-hmm. So I just figured, hey, cool, maybe they'll want some bull riding back piece that I can do in my way and make that killer. But nah, people are kind of still stuck on...
Like, I want this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the college kids, of course, they don't have a lot of money.
Yeah, well...
Whereas the college kids in Austin, probably more so of mommy and daddy's money.
I definitely think there's
they're
probably
willing
a
to spend.
huge gap in pay of the parents from UT to Tarleton.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
You're going to find a whole lot of more blue collar dads working extra shifts to put the kid through Tarleton versus UT's probably a lot of family money and I'm sure there's those same things too where dads working extra shifts.
If you were to put a shop over by TCU, you'd probably get a lot of
you're right.
very wealthy clientele coming over there.
So, and that being said, I just think that the most important thing is knowing your demographic. Like, I don't really try to cater myself necessarily to college kids or things like that. I just do the work that I enjoy doing, and people that want to collect it no matter what walk of life, as long as you're willing to pay for what I have to offer, then I would love to meet you and tattoo you,
Yeah.
So
while living down in Austin, do you want to? Are you okay talking with the how do you say that? Is it the Lakota stuff? Am I saying that wrong? Do you want to talk about that or no?
Yeah,
Is that-
I'm an open book.
Okay.
I'll preface that with I could only say what my personal perceptions and experiences are.
that's what it's about.
So I'm not here to say more than I know,
Right.
but sometimes I feel like I know more than I can say. And it's mostly just the limitations of being able to express that without.
Well, and hold on, the
experience.
respect for the actual stuff itself, I imagine.
Yeah.
We've kind of gone over that with different things before, but you got into that while down in Austin, and explain when I'm saying what do you call it? How do you call it? Because I'm saying that
I just call it ceremony, living in a good way.
So like Native American ceremony, or
yeah, that definitely seemed to be the path of my spiritual growth, for sure.
So how did you get that while down in Austin? How did you?
So, while I was at Resurrection and hanging out with my friend Roger, I ended up just, I've always liked being outdoors in nature, and I ended up discovering a hobby or passion or obsession, as it turned out to be in my life, of looking for arrowheads and Native American artifacts. You could just walk creeks and just find them laying there. And I just thought, wow, that's the craziest thing ever. So much, in fact, that when my father figure, Jim, had passed away, I had my dog and me, and I just found myself out in the woods. And when I was out there, I would just dig for hours at a time. 8 hours, I'd be out there just digging a hole. And I'd get so exhausted, and I'd lay back on my throw dirt behind me, and I'd look up at the stars or the trees, and feel the wind blowing on me. And I felt so connected. And I thought about the life that had been there below my feet for thousands of years that thrived, and how life is so different, and how people don't even realize what's below their feet. In Austin, you can't even throw a stone without hitting a campsite of a primitive civilization. Mm-hmm. So it's everywhere. And they would dig this stuff up, throw it through rock crushers, no preservation, because they don't want anything to slow down their housing development. And so at the time I was doing what I called night hawking. And we would go into these places and we would we'd preserve these things before they were going to be lost forever and covered up with concrete. So at the time, I thought I was almost doing something a little bit more noble. And the more that I started to get interested in that and learning about the culture and appreciating the indigenous people that lived life in a pure, clean way, utilizing what was given to them and not taking overfishing or I just
kind of would have been a lot of Comanche as well, though, in there, which that's pretty.
Hey, look, this is all I'll say. No matter what background or what people you come from, there's going to be a cousin that does something in a way that you don't approve of.
Absolutely, yeah.
You got to look at it this way: the Comanche were like the wolves that went around and kept the wild population down. You know what I mean? You got to have bears and wolves and stuff.
I wasn't trying to like crap on nobody. But
I respect the shit out of the Comanches. They lived they were some badass
Empire
dudes.
of the Summer Moon. You ever read that book?
Part of it is. Yeah.
That's a great book.
That's a good book.
I need to get into it. I have a bad hobby of starting a book, getting 3/4 of the way through, and putting it down and getting on to the next.
ADD.
Yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted you there.
No, that's okay. So I guess just that, I was really interested in that. I talked to my friend Bob, who has an incredible life and happened to know a person. Basically, his wife was a bartender at the Continental Club, and Bob was a musician as well as a tattooer. And so he met a lot of different people. And one of the doormen, his name was Eric. And I met Eric. His nickname was Smiley. He was just always very happy and easy to get along with. And they invited me to go to a nipi, a sweat lodge ceremony. So I went to this sweat lodge. And when I was in there, I had just been through something that I had felt something that I'd never experienced in a church pew, with some guy just talking at me about his personal convictions and what it just seemed like another set of rules of what I can and can't do. And this way was just a little bit more simple and pure. And I felt like nobody was judging me. It was just between me and the creator, the things that we do not know, the great mystery, Wankatonko, whatever you wish to call him, God, Yahweh, the breath, sacred life.
Gorgolek.
All these things. Because I believe that a lot of people know a spiritual connection to a higher power, but we all might call them a different name. It's just kind of like a rose by a different name. It's still a rose. It's still just as beautiful. So I feel like when I went through that, I was like, whoa, that was pretty crazy. And I didn't really know it was for me until my dog had passed away. I tried to save her. I put her through cancer. I tried the Western medicines. I tried all these things that were associated with this world and how we are social creatures and how we try to look at things and view things. And we try to put everything in a package, like it's okay to consume this thing out of this package, even though this is a four-legged animal that walked around, without giving thanks and understanding that four-legged gave us companionship, gave us warmth when we were cold, or food when we're starving, and I just looked at how the natives lived and had respect for all things around them. And so I was very attracted to that. And then I went back and I talked to Eric about it, and he said, dude, we honor our four-leggeds here. And I started going and going, and I just kept on feeling better. It was very hard. It was very hot at first. I mean, I don't know if you've...
a sauna would probably be the closest that I've ever done anything to that. And I'm sure
it's a different type of heat.
Yeah. So, yeah, what is the difference? Explain that, if you can.
Yeah.
I want to ask
No,
you.
yeah. So basically, you go into the ceremony, and it's 4 rounds, and there's usually 4 songs that are sung, that are prayer songs. The 4 rounds, you're there for, introducing yourself to the spirits. There's a prayer round, there's a healing round, and then a thank you round, and then you're done. And during the rounds, you take a little break, but during each round, it might be 15, 20 minutes long that you're in there. And it's just a mental thing, because you're in the darkness and you're all in it together.
Hot.
Yeah. And that helps you, like when you get outside, you feel like you stepped into the air conditioning, even if it's triple digits, like Texas has to offer,
Yeah.
And I started working a fire for it, the ceremony, and heating up the stones. And it's known as being a firekeeper. And I did that for several years.
Is that kind of like an apprenticing thing to do? Is it something that the younger people do?
You're learning a lot. Yes. It's when you start attending the ceremonies, you realize that there's just so much more out there than what you could ever think of just by going to a sweat lodge. Like when you first go, like the sun dancing and all these things that kept on being shown to me. It's like I would learn one thing, and then firekeeping. So then I would go and work a fire at another ceremony known as Humblecha. It's where you go out for 4 days, no food or water, cry out for a vision, which I had to go and support those ceremonies for a couple years, and before I could actually go out and do my 4 days, and I'll tell you, I've experienced some of the hardest things mentally and spiritually and physically by doing these things. But because of those hardships, I was able to walk away and learn so much with a much more of a deeper connection to that which is around me and living my life in a good way.
So is there a resurgence of this? Because it's never something, it's not like you see a church and you pass it. I mean, is there a resurgence of people kind of doing this? I've heard in the last couple of years, a handful of people tell me about going to a sweat lodge. And I don't know that prior to, 2017, 2018, I had ever heard of anyone going to a sweat lodge. So,
well, it's been so good and healing for a lot of people experiencing PTSD, people that are going through sobriety. It's been used for several years, and I think that there's been more of an awakening or more of an understanding and acceptance of it lately because of the fact that the human rights movements that had to that involved indigenous Native American people were a little bit more recent than, say, like the Martin Luther King times, which is associated with the 60s. Mm-hmm. Whereas even the right to pray in an Inipi sweat lodge was illegal up into the 1970s, almost the 1980s. The American Indian movement that was started, Chief Leonard Crow Dog was the main medicine man, during the American Indian movement in 1973. He ended up unifying like several tribes and bringing them back to their ceremonial ways. So when I go up to Leonard Crow Dog's paradise up in South Dakota, and he passed away about 2 years ago now, and his son is running the ceremony, and you can see that it's still alive and strong and doing well because of people like Leonard Crow Dog Sr. that learned how to speak English as one of his 4 languages to go before Congress in 1978 and get sun dancing legalized, their right to pray in the way that, has been with their people.
That's crazy to think about. Right to pray.
Yeah.
It's mostly because people were fearful and they didn't understand it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if someone wanted to do that, would you say here in Texas? Is there someone? Are you having to travel? Is there one area to do it, or could you find?
There's actually Sundances that happen here in Texas. There's one that happens out of Lampasas called Lone Star, and I went out there to support a couple years. There's a bunch of people all over that realize the benefits and healing that they receive, from it.
Yeah, it sounds like pretty extreme, kind of gnarly thing you're putting yourself through, and I say that in a good way. I'm not saying that negatively. I'm just. Like I would think that, like just kind of overcoming the 4 days without food, the hot stuff, like knowing that you got through that. That's a pretty. You have to look at other things in your life. If you like, hey man, I just did this 4 days with no food, or however long you sit in the sweat lodge. Like so I can handle this. I can handle whatever. Like it has to. I would imagine it kind of strengthens your resolve. Maybe is that the right way to say it?
It definitely makes you stronger.
Handle with a lot.
Yeah.
If I got through that, I can get through this.
Yes.
That's pretty neat. I would imagine there's probably pretty strong like community around that as well.
Yeah, the community is really tight, and something that you were just mentioning as far as the fasting, that's in Christianity, that's in civilizations across the world. Even in Switzerland, they believe in sweating, in the changing of the seasons, doing hot and cold extremes because it's an immune booster. They say that if you're raising your internal temperature, that's the best way to fight cancer. And I know people that were diagnosed stage 3 testicular cancer, went out on a mountain, took medicine and prayed and fasted, and their body boosted itself. And when they came back, Western medicine doctors that were practicing medicine were baffled. They didn't know how it just disappeared with no sign.
Yeah, I think there's a healthy medium people should look at when they look into when they're facing things like that. Like I think there's definitely some good with Western medicine, but they probably should look at some of this other stuff too. Because
the problem with Western medicine, because I don't believe that all Western medicine is bad. Like you. I think that there was people with good intentions, humanitarian interests, such as the polio vaccine. But as we've seen with COVID, when there's money involved, it doesn't necessarily have people's best interests in mind. And I think now is the time more than ever that we need to be more informed of what we
absolutely
take. I just recently had contracted a parasite. I think it was from some contaminated water. And when I came back, I started having all these stomach issues. And so I did a lot of the research on the ivermectin route, and that is an anti-parasitic.
Yeah,
it's
that's
not
what it's for.
Yeah,
it's so crazy how they demonize the ivermectin.
Yeah,
it's so crazy.
And things that are pennies on the dollar, so cheap to make. Now people buy the rights to it, and then they sell it for an extreme amount of money that the common person can't afford unless they join this whole roller coaster.
I was just telling him on my ride over here, telling him about my sister went to the dermatologist. And the dermatologist gave her some cream that she's supposed to use. I don't know what it's for. It's not my business. Anyway, and when she got the prescription, the lady at the dermatologist's office said, "We're going to send your prescription to this pharmacy in Arlington." My sister's like, "Well, I live a long way from Arlington. That's like a 2-hour round trip for me just to go pick up some medication. I don't really want to do that. Send it to something closer to me." She goes, "Well, we can't do that." "Well, we could, but it's going to cost you $800. And my sister's like,
$800 a month.
Well, yeah, but it's a thing. It'll last for 6 months.
Okay.
But, yeah. So this thing's $800, even with her insurance. She's like, "Well, that's a lot of money. I don't think I want to take this now." She goes, "That's why we send this one in Arlington, because we have a deal with them where they issue a bunch of coupons and discounts at this pharmacy. So it takes it from $800 to $65. So my question is, how is something that's $800 for everybody else?
And every other pharmacy.
Every other pharmacy, it's now $65.
Yeah.
That's fucking crazy.
It's like everything out there has like this loophole or this connection to it. And if you just are the discerning consumer, you can figure out that little thing, look for your little deal, your coupon or whatever. And
Yeah,
it's
and it goes,
creepy
like-
because this country also feeds upon the mindless consumers.
Yeah.
That just live under this blanket idea of protection that the FDA is there for your
Yeah,
good
when
and
they're
your
clearly not.
safety. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, when I had my surgery, the hospital charged $126,000 to the insurance, but after it was all said and done, insurance only paid them $11,000.
Mm-hmm.
So where did they come up with $126,000 for two and a half days in a hospital?
Yeah.
I don't know.
And literally, what kind of bills could they use to justify
Yeah,
that
exactly.
price tag? 'Cause,
Yeah, I
mean,
think just feeding me for those 2 days, they charged like $8,000.
I don't know if I've told this story. I remember years ago. I think I told it. The crutches lesson.
Yeah,
I
you
don't
told
remember-
me that once.
Yeah, I don't remember who it was. Someone I knew. It might have been kids. Might have been me. I don't know. But someone sprained their ankle or something. We're at the emergency room. They're like, "You're gonna need to be on crutches." And so they gave, "Hey, your insurance pays for crutches. Here's a set of crutches." And the guy brings them to us. And he's like, "Let me show you how to use them." Yeah, why not? So he does. And we get our bill 3 months later or whatever and says crutches lesson, $120 or whatever it was. I'm like, "Are you serious? Hang on, bro. We could have YouTubed that."
Yeah. Yeah, it's nuts what they charge.
Yeah.
I had this biopsy done once on my throat because I thought I don't know, there's something wrong with my throat. So I go in there, and this is the first surgery I've ever had. It wasn't even really a surgery, but I go in there and I'm signing the paperwork. You know, you got to go to the hospital the day before and sign all the paperwork and all that shit. So I'm sitting there, and the lady's going over through everything, and she says, she slides this piece of paper over and says, "This is what we're gonna bill insurance." It was like $15,000 or whatever. And I was like, "Oh, goddamn, that's a lot." And she goes, "But the insurance is only going to pay $1,300, I think is what it was." So, and then she gives me that piece of paper, and she goes on, and I'm looking at this thing going, "Wait a second, the insurance is only going to cover $1,300 of this $15,000 bill." I stopped her. I said, "Hey, wait, am I going to pay I got to do the rest of this? If that's the case, I'm just going to leave. I'm not going to do this." She goes, "Oh, no. That's just, that's all taken care of. You don't have to worry about that. The insurance is just going to pay the $1,300. That's all it's going to cost." I'm like, "So wait a second. So you're telling me you're going to bill them $15,000, but it's really a $1,300 operation?" She's like, "Well, yeah, it's a $15,000 operation." I said, "It's not, because you're only going to get $1,300.
Yeah.
So it's not a $15,000 operation. If somebody come in here without insurance to get that discount, you would have billed them $15,000. She's like, "Well, yeah, that's what it costs, but it doesn't cost that."
Yeah.
There's a lot of medicine stuff that's kind of changing with that direct. What do they call it? Direct care. Direct care. It's basically where you pay a doctor
Concierge care.
Is that what it's called? Yeah,
So
$15 or $20 a month or whatever.
Well, it depends
is.
on the doctor. Yeah.
Yeah, it depends on the doctor, and you just Zoom him, and you have
Yeah.
basically it takes the insurance companies and everything like that out of the medical field, which maybe you get the insurance out of it, so you get care that maybe the doctor says, "Hey, why don't we try this less invasive thing that costs less money," instead of saying, "Hey, you got pretty good insurance, bro. You're gonna need to have all that shoulder reconstructed," or whatever the case may be. You know.
I had my doctor told me once, because I was asking about this. I said, what did he think we should do to try and fix the cost of healthcare in this country? And his response was, I don't know." He goes, when I send you to get a test, I don't even know what it costs. He goes, "I'm ordering the test, but they won't tell me what it costs. Nobody finds out until after the test is done and all the paperwork submitted." So he's like, "I can't even tell you if it's worth I'm just gonna send you to do it. I don't know how much it's gonna cost you though. No idea."
You want the doctor that is motivated to find the issue,
Yeah.
and fix it. So whatever test that they need to order, it's like you want to go along with it.
Yeah, for sure.
But in a situation, and I do believe in privatized healthcare, because I don't want somebody to tell me what doctor I have to go to or something like that. But it's kind of like, how do you really place faith in somebody and know that their motivation, that their interest isn't really the same as your best interest? You know what I mean? It's a really crazy kind of setup when it comes to the medical industry, because it's one more string that's connected to this multitude that's meant to just profit and continue to grow, because it needs to sustain itself.
Yeah.
In order for these new discoveries to be made, they have to charge this exorbitant amount of money
Yeah.
in order.
And I would imagine being tattoo artist for the majority of your adult life. I guess that's fair to say.
Yes.
There's no health insurance in being a tattoo.
There's no 401k.
There's no health insurance. So you're coming from this from a position of you essentially have been self-employed your entire adult life.
I work for myself.
Yeah.
And I definitely didn't take any, I didn't get any stimulus check.
Yeah.
I made stimulus money, I guess.
You
but
made it from there.
I didn't get no check from the government. Yeah, I've definitely tried to live life on my own terms as much as possible. But I realized that, like not having those securities, especially there for my family, like I was fine risking my own health, that gamble. But kids get sick.
Yeah.
Kids break arms if they're living life right. You know what I mean? Like there's going to be a time where you need that.
Well, and I think that was my deal when I did The Apprentice for you. I kind of, like you said about music, you realize like, I'm not going to be Mozart. And I think at some point I realized, hey, I really enjoy drawing and I enjoy hanging out at the tattoo shop, but I'm probably not going, I'm probably not going to be I'm going to be a tattooer at best.
But I've seen people that were very successful with what they did.
Well, right. But then on top of looking at it myself saying, oh, I'm going to be a tattooer at best. And then also having 2 kids and a third one on the way at the time, and like, yeah, we're gonna need some insurance.
Yeah,
we're gonna need some,
right.
Which is I mean, people do it all the time. Like Cody that we had on here. He's he did it for a long time. Just it is possible to be done. It's just
Dude, have you ever priced private insurance? We have really good insurance through our job, but man, it is ridiculous.
How many months of paying your insurance bill would it take for you to come up with the $1,300 that they paid on that bill?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But this guy got, so he's actually probably, I would be the better one to ask that question because what did they pay for your operations when you went through your sex change?
Oh, that was...
Sorry, no. Your cancer surgery. How much? What was the bill on that?
The hospital bill was $126,000, but they only paid like $11,000.
Oh, that was the same one.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. And then the surgeon was quite reasonable, really, for what he did. It was $8,000. I thought, well, shit, that's a fucking deal for what you did, guy. Whatever. I thought it'd be way higher than that, but he was like, actually, he was less than that. He was like $7,800. I was like, okay, that's cool. But then the chemotherapy, I did that for 6 months. The insurance was paying $30,000 a month.
Wow.
For 6 months just to keep my fat ass alive. So
you were definitely better off having the insurance.
For sure. Yeah. Everybody's better off with insurance if it's good insurance.
Good insurance. Yeah.
I was offered insurance once at my job before I started working where I'm at now. I was bringing home $1,400 a month, and the insurance was $280 for just me. It had a $5,000 a year deductible. And I'm like, I make $1,400 a month after taxes. There's no way I can afford that.
Yeah.
So probably would be better off just dying. Which I guess is what they want you to do anyway.
Well, so living and working for yourself, I mean, like I said, you've basically been self-employed your entire life. I mean, was that kind of the idea, like not working for the man, or is it just something that kind of, I'd say I'm not working for the man, or is it just something that came along with being a tattoo artist, and then over the time you're like, yeah, this is.
So,
or would you do it different? I guess as well.
Looking back, I wouldn't have done it different. I might have chosen a different a route to do the same thing. I believe, especially having less government and stuff like that, you know what I mean? Like, I think it's weird that we're shoved into these 2 choices in every aspect of our life. You have to either be Republican or Democrat, chicken or beef. There's no pork option, or elk, like all these things. So when I was young, I was already disenchanted, I guess, from what the expectations for the norms of society were, to fall in line and to not question things. And then, of course, I came from this good background that I hung out with a friend and we went to this house party and all those kids knew each other. And I get in trouble because I was the oldest one as being a gang leader at first. They were trying to say that I was the problem child out of this group of people that knew each other. And they waited 1.5 years to take me to court, and I ended up with a felony record to start off my career path.
Oh, wow.
As a young man, that was a life-changing thing. I had troubles getting jobs. I had troubles finding a place that would even rent to me because this background made me seem like such a different person on paper. And so because of that, I feel like it gave me the courage, the strength to have the balls and say, you know what? I don't have to live life struggling to try to fit into somebody else's expectations of what I'm supposed to do in a career path. I had a biological father that was very motivated by money and being respected by others in your society and stuff like that. I've always tried to be a little bit more in the background. I'd never wanted to be famous or to be admired for what I do based on how I look doing it. I would rather my work and what I put out there speak for me. And I guess that's the reason why I've always had such a problems with social media and getting out there, because I feel like I could have been way more successful. There's people that jump on every opportunity that come across the table towards them to get on TV or whatever. And if they wouldn't have done it, somebody else would have. There would have been TV shows ruining tattoos and stuff. So, I mean, for me, while I took I just feel like everything fell in line, and it coincided with the perceptions on how I viewed government, how I viewed life. I've wanted to keep things simple. I enjoyed working with my hands. I wanted to have a tangible output for what I was putting in.
So in a way, too, I mean, that was probably a hard thing to go through, getting that. Well, no, not probably. I'm sure that getting that felony, starting off as a young man, trying to start your life, and you have this hanging over your head. But in a way, it probably helped you with the way you
thankful
went.
for it.
Yeah, in the same time, because you're looking at it like, well, I can be successful. I don't need you. I can do this on my. I can be a successful person on my own.
Yes.
In this way.
Yes. And I just really, the only changes I would have made is I wish I would have been a little bit more smart with money, so that way I could have my self-sustained farm and stuff that I moved out to the country to do, to take care of myself, to be more aware of where my food source is. And
God, I'd love to do that. My dream is to one day own enough, have a little farm, and I want 90% of the food I eat to come off that land. That'd be fantastic.
Sure. And I think what you don't grow on that land, you should also have a strong sense of community. Yeah. Have other like-minded individuals that you could trade. Maybe they're growing tomatoes while you're growing cucumbers.
Yeah. I need to trade with this guy for cream because I'm not going to have a cow, so I need some butter.
I think society, especially with what's going on politically or even socially with certain movements out there, I think it's all to divide people and we're all based on this idea of scarcity and working against each other. We have a very competitive market. Everything is a competition with each other. It's not about us living in communities and we share these other spaces because we know it's good for everybody. I'm surprised that there's not more families that don't build this big outdoor kitchen thing and then have little houses built around that, and that they can all come together on the land. Back when people had block parties and celebrated birthdays together, they knew who their neighbors were.
Well, you think about just in our lives, because we're relatively all about the same age. So think about the festivals, the stuff that went on in your small. We all pretty much grew up in a small town, relatively close to each other, but everywhere there's the festivals that went on, the community events that went on. Social media has killed all that.
All of it's gone.
All that. And you don't see that. You don't see any of the community that I think you did 25 years ago. I mean, that's 25. Yeah, maybe. I mean, in the 90s. In the 90s, you saw a lot of that. Just right here in town, there was a festival. This was a dairy producing city. It was dairy farmers all out here, or dairy producing town. And there was a kind of a festival they had a festival for the dairymen. They did all kinds of and it was all community based. There was nobody coming in. But you don't see that you don't see that, or at least around here anymore. I can't speak for the rest of the country, but from what I've seen, you just don't see that sense of community. And maybe that's just maybe this area is just growing too much. Maybe if you did get further out in West Texas or South Texas or East Texas, somewhere more rural than this is.
We're just gonna have to start our own, I guess. our own festival.
Donate our own festival in Granby, Colorado.
Killdozer.
So kind of I wanted to ask you, so speaking of rural living, 10 years in Austin, grew up in a rural area. I'm saying that, rural?
That's how you talk.
It's okay, yeah.
You can hear yourself talking.
I can hear myself.
Everybody else knows how stupid you sound.
Anyway, in the country, moved to Austin for 10 years, lived the kind of in the city life and everything. And when you get back, you've moved back to the country since then. So coming back to the country, was there a sigh of relief? I feel more natural. I mean, you've already told us that you've always felt more at home kind of in amongst nature. So was that refreshing for you to come back? And
Yeah.
did it feel like your roots maybe?
I feel like I got to sleep a lot better right off the bat because I feel like your brain is constantly filtering out all this ambient noise of being in a city and having a neighbor right next to you at all times, you know. And so it's nice to be able to walk out in your front porch and your drawers,
In your
you know.
chonies?
Yeah. So it's, you know, like I said, it's a lot more slow paced. So with it came the stress of knowing that, wow, I'm going to have to really hustle in order to make the money and make things happen here. But this is a better area for my family. It's a better school system for the little girl to go to, you know, just all around. It was where I needed to be for this time. Not to say that there isn't certain aspects that I miss about Austin. Austin has a huge culture and scene for just about any interest that you're into. The food there is exquisite. You can go down to some local, you know, food truck and probably have one of the best tacos that you've had. You know, it's also prevalent right there. But yeah, moving out to the country where things are a little bit slower and more simple, I would definitely rather enjoy a longer commute looking at trees and possibly some wildlife than I would yelling and getting pissed off that any number of influx drivers, especially the ones that seem to have concentrated from California, are not looking before they change lanes or signaling or trying to run into me. And, you know, it's like, you know, it's a whole different, it's a shock. It was way different, but it's something that I look forward to. I'm grateful. It's been nice to kind of meet up with and rekindle relationships that I've had for a very long time, people that I care about and that are like brothers, you know. I'm surprised that we haven't hung out.
It's been crazy. It's been, and when we were hanging out a lot, my kids were babies and infants and toddlers, and then Austin, and we a time or two when you were in Austin, and then now they're high schoolers and driving, and we're looking at colleges and the military, and it's this crazy whole space in there. But yeah. So another question. So I always I like to ask, if you were going to give advice to someone that wanted to tattoo, wanted to kind of do this, a young man starting out, what would be your advice to someone wanting to get going within the tattoo industry?
Yeah. So I meet a lot of people that are tattooers, non-tattooers, welders, you know, all walks of life. And I think that no matter what you're interested in, don't let the standards of conformity dictate your direction in life. If you have a passion to do something and you enjoy that, you experience a fulfillment when you're done with that job and you can stand back and feel like good about yourself and what you're doing to make your money, you know, even at an ethical standard that you gave your utmost at the time that you were performing what it is that you did, then that's the right thing for you to do. I feel like a lot of people just fall into a job and they have to be there 8 hours a day, check in and out. They hate what they do. Man, that's a horrible way to live life.
Yes, it is.
So if you're tattooing, do it right. You know, there's a lot of information that you can learn from somebody that's already been there and done it before you. So I still preach apprenticeships, even though you can pretty much learn anything you need to off of YouTube. I hate to say that, but if you're astute enough and you pay attention, you can learn a lot, but, you know, by taking it upon yourself. So just if you're self-motivated, put an portfolio together, take it to a tattoo shop, get tattooed at the place that you want to learn from. If you're not getting tattooed there, you have no right to walk in there and ask for an apprenticeship. That's just so silly. Kids today, you know? Yeah. So.
Man, it's good stuff. Good stuff. Do you want to
plug anything?
Plug a social media or
Yeah. So this Tampa convention is coming up. I'm going to be there the 20th through the 23rd. I'm going to be working out of the Mind's Eye booth with Scott Weatherwax. Big shout out to him. Thank you. Thank you to all the guys at Southside Tattoo. You know, the owners, Bart, Chris, and Nasca are all incredible people. I love Jeffrey and Christian and Jet. They're all solid dudes. They do great tattoos. It's always awesome experience and very pleasant to go down there and tattoo with those guys. Everywhere else that I'm working, you know, I'm just always so thankful to just be in an environment that's positive and around like-minded individuals that we can talk about things, even the stuff that's taboo. Because if you can't talk about it in a tattoo shop, then where the hell can you talk about some of this stuff?
There's some good conversations that go on at the tattoo shop.
Yeah. So you can check out my work at on Instagram at Saint X Ollie or SAINTXOLLIE. You know, there's really not too much other stuff to plug. I mean,
so if someone, maybe you said this, if someone was in Austin, Austin's kind of turned into a destination for people, for be it Joe Rogan's Comedy Club or just 6th Street, what's always been a destination, I guess. But when someone's down there and they said, I want to get a tattoo, where would you send them?
Southside Tattoo.
Southside Tattoo.
But half those guys, I mean, you know, I love them. I worked with them for a short period of time and just instantly felt like family with those guys. But that's not to say that it isn't in so many of the other shops. Like Roger over there at Resurrection is a really solid dude. My friend Bob now running the Only Electric Rodeo Open, and that's out of Lockhart. So you can go get some good barbecue, go get a good tattoo. You know, there's just so many talented artists out there. I wish I could give shout outs to everybody, but there's this, it's such a tight knit community and so many good people. And then a lot of people that, like I said, I've lost over the last couple of years. Mike Tyrell just passed away. There's a lot of solid, heavy hitting people that have, you know, given a lot of good history and culture to tattooing in Austin, Texas. So,
and then if someone was up here, where would you, your place is in Weatherford. Do you want to?
Yeah. If, you know, if you're in the Weatherford area, go check out, Eric Lacefield. You know, I do a lot of work out there. Sometimes I go down to Stephenville. If you're in that area, you know, you can check out Mickey or any of the people that he has working at the shop. He's such a good dude. We actually share the same birthday. He's like my brother from another mother, only he's a little bit more brown than I am. You know, if you're in the Burleson area, go check out the Broken Circle shop. It's owned by a good friend of mine that I've looked up to and respected, and it's good to see somebody that just stayed in one area and just gave people good tattoos, you know, and
who's that in the Burleson area?
Broken Circle, owned by my friend Tyson Meyer. You know, in Burleson, it's right off of 35. Man, there's just so many friends, so many people that I've been fortunate enough to meet and be welcome at their shop, you know, to come by. You know, if you're in the San Marcos area, go to Bubba's Family Tattoo. If you're out in Temple, Texas, go to Lucky and Love Per. They're great artists. They're brothers, second generation tattooers. Their mother was a heavy hitting tattooer in Waco, Texas, you know. That's just awesome. That blue collar, awesome. You can walk in and walk out with a great tattoo. Just so many good people. I wish I could, like I said, I could just sit here and name so many people.
Well, after how long in the industry? 25 years?
No, it's right around the 20-year mark, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it's 20 years mark in the industry. I'm sure there's someone that you'll think later, damn, I should have said that, but there's so many.
Yeah, absolutely. And this podcast has been kind of crazy because I didn't know what you would ask or anything, and it was really casual. I appreciate this opportunity to come and have a Use that as an excuse to see you after so many years.
Appreciate it. It's been great.
Well, check out Ollie's Instagram, Saint X Ollie. I said that right? Saint X Ollie.
Yes, sir.
All right, check out his Instagram.
We got a website up finally. WayItShouldBeShow.com.
Check out the website. We have Instagram, Facebook. Go like that. Tell your friend. We still don't have anyone listening in Arizona. I don't know what's up with Arizona. We need someone in Arizona. Send it to your Arizona friends. All right, guys. Thanks for listening. Next time.
All right. See ya.
Dude, that was really good, man.